sleep at all. So I'm wavering between very tired and giddy with sleep deprivation. So, as mentioned before, L-Cross happened last night. Did anybody watch the L-Cross impact? Woo! Awesome. I included some news. I thought this was a very nice little title. It doesn't produce a spectacle, but it still might be a hit. This is a really different news title than what you might have heard 12 or 24 hours ago. As mentioned before, there was talk of bombs and missiles and all kinds of stuff. And what I want to point out, so what I'm talking about today is engaging people in lunar science. And one of the cool things about the L-Cross mission is that it engaged people in many ways, but it's been engaging some people for months. There is a very strong amateur astronomer campaign associated with the L-Cross mission. So there were hundreds, perhaps thousands of amateur astronomers looking at the moon waiting for this impact last night. And then, or excuse me, this morning, 4:30 a.m. And then there was a lot of engagement today. Twitter, for example, there were 4 trending topics at one point. It was like Dear NASA, NASA, L-Cross, and Moon. And not everybody necessarily knew everything about the mission. There was some misinformation, but I was really excited because people cared about the moon. And I work for the NASA Lunar Science Institute. If people care about the moon, that's awesome. And I think it was a really good opportunity for education, and a lot of people ended up visiting the NASA L-Cross site. So I work here at the NASA Lunar Science Institute, digital science strategist. But my mind lives here. So I think about the moon every day. And even though I have an official job title and description, I work at NASA because I care about space exploration. And my personal motto every day is I want more people out there to really believe that we, as a human species, are exploring the cosmos. That's the reality. I want people to think we really are doing this. This is real. We are going there. We've been there. We're going to go back. We're going to go beyond. And this is real. Space science and space exploration is a reality. So a lot of talks start with a problem, like let me present you a problem and show you the solution in this whatever talk, how long talk. But people aren't interested in science. I don't think that's the problem. People are naturally interested in science. This is a picture from a nature camp, and kids are natural scientists, totally natural. Somewhere along the line, we're unteaching people to be scientists and unteaching people that it's interesting or relevant. So I'm talking about the engagement of the public today. That's my awesome science angle. And I want to go back and remember how people are naturally scientists. And the word naturally is a word I'm going to use a couple times here. My vision for lunar scientists, the end goal I'm trying to get to at a daily basis is that it's your moon, and really emphasizing the idea of citizen scientists, amateur astronomers, and partners in science. So these are all phrases. People might argue about what's the correct one, but there's a lot of overlap there, so I just want to throw all those terms out. So just a general outline of my talk. I'm going to talk a little bit about the Institute so you know where I'm from, innate curiosity, and then going the next step and finding meaning, science for everyone, and then talking about some specific ways that you can connect to your moon. So I work for the NASA Lunar Science Institute. It's a virtual institute, which means we fund researchers all across the country that are not in our building. And we have 7 funded domestic teams, 3 international partners, many more. Lunar science is a wonderful way, in my opinion, to achieve some sense of world peace, because you have people working together for science. It's a great unifier. But in the end, our objective is science. These people that we support they're in a lab and they want to publish. So this is our mission statement. I've circled words that are about collaboration and communication. Science and research are in each of these 4 lines as well. But basically, the point is our moon. We're talking about research, but there's a people element here. So we're trying to do science of the moon, on the moon, and from the moon. And I have this is from Wikipedia. I was talking with my coworkers about this, about why people are interested in what's science. What's science? What is science? That's what we're all here about. And one thing is the idea of natural philosophy. So just to read a little bit, natural philosophy is a term applied to the study of nature and of the physical universe that was dominant before the development of modern science. It's considered to be the precursor of natural sciences. An important distinguishing characteristic of science and natural philosophy is the fact that natural philosophers generally did not feel compelled to test their ideas in a practical way. Instead, they observed phenomena and came up with philosophical conclusions. So, again, the word natural. Basically, the idea behind this is that you look, you observe, and then sometimes you just have to look first. Actually, let me go back. The innate curiosity thing. I have like 2 or 3 slides about what the innate curiosity of the moon is, and I was sitting there thinking, I was like, this is kind of silly. I'm telling people why the moon's interesting, because shouldn't you be able to tell me why you're interested in the moon? So can people maybe throw out some ideas like what they think of when they think of the moon? Moon men?
Moon bases?
Moon people on the moon? Yeah.
So that it's something that unites us with people from, like, that's part, like, all of human history. Like, everybody's always noticed it and thought things about it.
Definitely. Any other?
The 2001 Space Odyssey.
That too, there's so much great science fiction. So I came up with a few fun things like stories of mythology, the wolf, werewolves, lunatics, gods and goddesses. We can all see the moon. People, you mentioned, all through time, all ages, all countries and cultures have seen the moon. There's different names, there's so many stories. I'm not even gonna start to go over it, but it's just, there's so much personal connection to the moon. And the other thing is, you can observe the moon with a telescope, binoculars, or with a naked eye. You can't say that about a lot of science. So sometimes I feel a little bit spoiled because we have this glorious object in the eye that represents our institute half the time, or more than half the time. So it's very lucky. And then there's so many levels of science after that. We have this little 12-second video we did, and we have a couple of 12-second videos, but the funny thing about this is our most popular video, which I think is hilarious.
What do we see on the moon? And does it have any astronomical basis? What exactly is the man on the moon, or rabbit on the moon? Here are some various representations. Geek Soderman and
yeah, and it got a little choppy there because we uploaded it. But people like looking at the moon. It's probably pretty obvious. One of the great places where we can integrate this personal connection with the science is that the moon has co-evolved with the Earth for over 4 billion years. So it shares our past. Meteorite impacts, just in general, over time, it's our moon. It's not Saturn's moon or Mars's moon, it's our moon. And finally, one of the most compelling connections is that this is the furthest we as a human species has ever explored. So what about finding meaning? This was kind of the next step. Scientific method. Science is a continuing effort to discover. One of the interesting things it says is record measurable data relating to the observations and analyze this information to construct theoretical explanations of how things work. Basically, this is saying sometimes you have to probe further. So you might have initial observations, make a hypothesis, and then you would test with new observations, because you wouldn't test with the same observations. Idea is going further, finding meaning. So the kind of big thing I want to talk about is L-cross. L-cross was not something randomly hitting the moon. This was a science experiment. And people really want to know what's happening. We had a question, is there water in the poles of the moon, particularly in dark craters that perpetually dark, where water might condense or basically collect over time. And we would be able to impact that space, see what comes up, and with various instruments see the various spectra and see if there's a water signature. And then we would have both professional telescopes and amateur astronomers all recording this. And people were very engaged. People want to know. This is a relevant question. And now I'm talking about a non-moon project that's really awesome. Has anyone done Galaxy Zoo? Yay, it's very, very awesome. I'm going to tell you about something really awesome afterwards. It's going to be cooler than Galaxy. Well, okay, not cooler, but it's going to be as cool as Galaxy Zoo. Basically, Galaxy Zoo is where the Sloan Digital Sky Survey has tons of pictures of galaxies, and it will ask you to classify the shape of galaxies. So it's pretty simple. They show you a picture, and you choose between 3 buttons. And there's other interfaces as well, but basically you're choosing between 2 or 3 buttons at first. Pretty simple. People liked this. It's fun. But people wanted to find more meaning. Participants, you can just classify using the buttons, or you can go into the forums. Started noticing these green peas. They did them. And they asked the Galaxy Zoo PIs, what are these? What's going on? And they're like, that's not what we're studying. Just classify. And they're like, I don't think so. And they discussed this on the forums. And they found that they think these are areas with high rates of star formation. So this is actually leading to, there's a paper that's been submitted for peer review, and it's the first citizen science inspired paper of the project. This was not baseline Galaxy Zoo. This is something that came from the community. They wanted to know more, just to emphasize that point. So yes, explaining things deeper sometimes requires specialization. Sometimes that's math, but in general, people want to know. You don't have to be trained as a specialist to want to find more meaning. Everybody's searching for more meaning. But again, we're rooted in observation. So this is my exciting, I have a Venn diagram, which I was really excited about. And we have natural curiosity and the search for meaning, and where there's overlap, that's kind of where I think we can really grab people, the public, and get them involved with science. And this is a picture of scientists, which I found somewhat amusing, is that in general, scientists are people. And mostly they're human and sociable most of the time. Scientists in public are all people. And we're not one or the other. You're not like, oh, a social public person or a scientist. There's an overlap there. Let's capture that human side and the quest for meaning and the full scientific narrative. And is this pretty? Oh, I think it's pretty. This is kind of, this concept of bringing those things together is a study called, dubbed The Science of Pretty Pictures. Dr. Randall Smith of the Harvard-Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics was wondering, what effect does knowing what you're looking at matter? So who checks astronomy picture of the day? Anybody? Well, I have it on my iPhone, and you can get an RSS feed. But basically, it's the best pictures delivered every day, and they come with a little scientific explanation. So this is the pretty picture, and this is how, if you visited their website or some modification on your mobile device app, how you would view it. You have pretty picture, and then a description written by a scientist. So Dr. Randall Smith asked us some question. What's the difference if you show somebody a picture, if you show it with a short description, if you show it with a long description? So this is still, the results are still being analyzed, but in general, people found the pictures more attractive and interesting when they had some sort of description. So they fundamentally thought they were more beautiful with a description. So again, this is an overlap of that innate curiosity and awe and understanding. Galaxy Zoo, which I just mentioned earlier, they're doing similar studies, still working on analyzing all the data, but these were kind of the top motivations for why people participated. Astronomy, the subject, obviously, but I think the contribute in vastness was interesting because I kind of see contribute as searching for meaning and supporting that quest for knowledge, and vastness as that awe. And so again, we have an overlap of those two things. So what about lunar science? How is it your moon? You can view lunar samples through a virtual microscope online. You don't have to have a fancy telescope or be somebody with a lab coat. You can look at samples on your computer. This is a virtual microscope being developed at Open University in the UK. Telescopes. This one on the left, thousands and thousands of dollars for scientists to look at it. It's very complicated. Galileoscope, $30. It's part of the International Year of Astronomy. Also, Observe the Moon Night. This is at NASA Ames, but they are all over the country. Anybody can look through a telescope. You can go to a star party and not actually own a telescope and look through other people's telescopes. Who analyzes data? On the left, we have complex equations, representations of what solar flares look like on the moon, kind of complicated. You can analyze simpler data, which is the human eye does better than a computer, and this is very useful. And I know that's not the moon. That's just to clarify. So now I want to bring this together and say, really, how can you connect with your moon? Just to repeat that. L-Cross. If it were a day before, I would tell you you could observe it, but it happened 8 hours ago. It was very cool. This great website up where you can, there's observation gallery. They gave tips on photos. This was a Google group before, and these people are intense. The pictures are amazing, and they're sharing very technical information about their cameras and different lighting and all kinds of stuff. It's really interesting. This is kind of the quality that photo amateurs can take, which is pretty amazing. Moon Zoo. This is going to be launched in 6 months. NLSI is partnering with Moon Zoo, which is being branched out of Galaxy Zoo. So this is the idea of citizen science for the moon. Going to be using LROC data. LROC is Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter Camera. The LRO mission is still orbiting the moon and will for quite some time. People will be able to identify craters, look for interesting features such as Apollo missions, and boulder wars, which is kind of a fun term. People will give in 2 pictures and will say, this is more bouldery and this is less bouldery. And why would that be interesting to develop a scale there? You guess? Why that data is interesting?
The landing site?
Yes, yeah. Exactly. So that's landing site, has landing site implications. So this is kind of an interface where you'll be able to like select boulders and such and identify other features and such. On the social media side, My Moon, which is out of the Lunar and Planetary Institute, basically social media all about the moon. They're doing webcasts every week and all kinds of lunar photo contests and all kinds of good stuff. Prizes. Prizes are really picking momentum. They've been going for a long time. But at Ames next weekend, we're going to have the Regolith Excavation Challenge. This is more engineering than science, but I think engineering probably could have more public engagement as well. So I want to mention that. But they have basically competitions for people to build rovers to dig up dirt in simulated moon dirt. Nice little pot of cash there. The Google Lunar X Prize, I guess you can't see my laptop, but this is a picture from my laptop. One of my favorite stickers of theirs because we always look up at night. That's a competition to land on the moon, and you get different amounts of money depending on if you take a picture versus driving, etc. This is mentioned before, Observe the Moon Night. You don't need NASA to tell you there's an Observe the Moon Night. You can just observe the moon whenever you want. We put together this kind of little guide here, but just encouraging people to be social with their neighbors and look at the moon at night and look for features and think about how they formed. And you can discuss planetary impact processes and all these other things, all these scientific topics just that go off of that initial awe of observing the moon. So, and that is most of the prepared stuff, but just in general on Twitter, participate in Moon Zoo when it comes out. There's lots of data already online. It's not necessarily the best formatted. There are people working on lunar data APIs, but they're not quite out there yet. And if you have any more ideas, we can discuss it now or at lunch or whatever, but I would love to discuss more ways for people to connect with the moon and think about science and what's meaningful to them.
I have a question actually, which is that I've heard there's this plan to project advertisements onto the moon using lasers. Is that just a rumor, and if it's not, is there a way to stop that? Because I really hate that idea.
As far, that's completely a rumor as far as I know. I've never heard that. They actually diffuse a lot, lasers from when they're on Earth to the moon, so they wouldn't have as much energy or shine as much light. So it could, I mean, theoretically, somebody could orbit the moon and shine, I don't know. But no, there's no plans and there's no missions going there to do that. And there's apparently, there's some crazy tile, I forget if they're, what government agency they're part of, but there are people who watch everything that's in the air, whether it's a satellite, what type of satellite, you know, if it's a climate satellite or other things. And they actually, they interact with people who, astronomers mostly, who project lasers into the sky to create false stars, and that's part of the process of, I'm not an astronomer, so I don't want to talk too much on it, but basically part of the way of calibrating what they're doing. And those people, the astronomers, have to work with those people who know about all the military satellites, and so they don't hit them, basically. So.
So I just had a quick question / comment. I really like the idea of turning analysis into a game, like the boulder search that you were talking about. And I've heard there's someone who works down at Institute for the Future named Jane McGonigal who studies turning analytical tasks into games so that people essentially, you know, there's millions of people who play World of Warcraft and go around killing imaginary monsters and collecting imaginary treasure and buying imaginary swords to kill more imaginary monsters. And so people are willing to do fairly repetitive tasks for fairly obscure rewards. And it seems like if you could turn figuring out where a boulder was on the moon or figuring out where a weird star is in the sky into one of the tasks that these people need to perform in order to collect their imaginary gold, that you could get a lot of sort of artificial intelligence mileage out of that, you know, by distributing the task over the spare processor cycles of all idle teenage male humanity, you know. And I guess I wanted to ask if you knew of any more initiatives to do analysis as game, and I guess I just wanted to make that comment. So that's all I have.
No, I know that the analysis game has been talked about. There was a workshop with the Galaxy Zoo folks, and somebody's bringing that up. There's, I think, some hesitation as far as like how that impacts the quality of the data you get, because people might want to be faster or better, but without doing the analysis more carefully. And then there's also the other philosophical arguments to not be reward-based in learning, and that you should want to be contributing to science and not trying to beat somebody. And
you can reward people for how concordant their results were with other people, right? Like other people who they could communicate with. So there's ways around the idea that people would game the system and produce bad data. Like I can think of a way to design the system in such a way that that wouldn't happen.
That is possible. Yeah, I don't know of any active projects, but I think that would be interesting. I think right now it's kind of cool because you can also, when people are conscious of what they're doing, they also will be like, oh, I on my own want to go read that Peter Schultz moon book, because now I think the moon's really cool. So.
I think all this stuff is really awesome, and all these resources are really amazing, but I'm a scientist, and I had no idea these existed before. Does your office do anything to sort of reach out to the public in general to make them aware of these awesome resources? And it's sort of a broader question, like what can we do in general to make positive science accessible to like lay people?
Yeah, it's interesting because we would like to get our educational resources out to more people because that's a good thing. There's obvious reasons we want to do that. And some things pick up and some things don't pick up. We have mailing lists. Sometimes we end up going more to education as informal education, and that tends to be a more narrow group as opposed to anybody who's interested. You can certainly, you can contact me or like follow me. Not to like over promote Twitter, because I feel like I do that a lot, and I'm actually not trying to over promote Twitter, but I talk regularly on Twitter and share most of our resources there. Things like public events, sometimes we have, that has a more local effect. We do try to put most of this online. I don't know, sometimes it's hard to get it Googleable. So if you have tips on like where you get your resources from or where you naturally look, let me know, because we would like to have our things in the most useful places. And just to get, for reference, Minzu isn't actually out yet, but we're going to do a lot of sharing about that just because it's super awesome.
So maybe we can continue the discussion during lunch, which is going to be held in room N114, which is